once 123D Catch kind of went out of the setup, into something like this. So basically, this is a great little app. It's called Clone with a Q at the beginning of it, and it allows you to scan stuff in. And you can see that it's not the best, but you have to think about these new tools. They're going to get better, right? And better and better and better. And when they get to a point, we won't need modelers anymore, right? Well, we'll need modelers. I don't want to say we'll never need modelers because we need somebody to create the art. But for simple things, background elements, maybe to get started on something, you need an asset. So something like this is really nice. And what's cool is if we take the Mike Wazowski, he's from a little toy I've got in my bag there. And if I do AR, augmented reality, let me see if I can, the lighting has to be pretty good. See if we can put him down here. There we go.
Who said kill him? He's precious, I'll have you know.
Right? So here's this model that I scanned in a matter of seconds, maybe a minute, 2 minutes.
Will it work this time?
I hope so. Well, this is the one we scanned, isn't it? We ended up getting one that worked and one that didn't work.
Didn't it have like eye mess up or something?
No, it was an arm.
It was an arm?
Right? But here it is, and it's there, and it's pretty stable. It's got textures. But let's say I was making a one-to-one. I was making something that I wanted to print. Oh, now he moved. There he goes. Got to pick up that spot again. I maybe don't want to start with a sphere and start extruding. Maybe I need a little bit more information. This gives me that information. Here's a 3D print that we did for one of the 3D printing shows. Let me get this out of the way. If I can. All right, so once it finds a point, we can set it. It does a pretty good job. For something in the background, quick asset creation for shelves. This does it all. Now they just added a feature here. I'm not trying to sell you on Clone, but they just added a feature that for $20, a one-time payment, you get unlimited downloads. So basically, every model I make, I can either pay $1 for each one that I export out as an OBJ, or I get unlimited for $20, which isn't bad, considering I can scan away and I can build off of this, I can remesh it, I can resurface it and continue to model, right? It's a great little thing. So, it's pretty neat. I don't know if you'll be able to, you will be able to see this. I've got something simple here, and I've got some other things we might be able to try. But basically you add, right, and then it gives you this. Now you have to download this piece of paper, and it does a lot of the work for you. So if anybody's worked with 123D Catch, anybody worked with that or heard of it? Okay, 123D Catch, basically you put somebody on a chair, and you held a camera, and you took pictures all the way around them. And you did it at top, mid, and base level. This kind of sets that up for you. So as soon as I hit record, and it's flickering, it's not liking probably the lighting here. I go around and it tells me when it's filled, the information it's gotten. Oh, looks like we missed a little bit. And it's pretty robust because it's got that scanning plate. Once it gets enough information, it'll start building the model. My turntable is not the best. I think I'm going to hit R2D2 here in a second.
People woke up.
Now, when you're doing scans and things like that, you have to think about lighting, you have to think about the reflectivity on the surface. All of that will change the information that it's seeing. And this is a real simple object. Okay, that's big. And this is probably a bad example, because you're probably thinking, well, just take a cylinder, shake the bottom piece, and then take this and do that, but oh, this thing's having a hard time.
You'd be right if you went so wrong.
Come on. Come on.
He's not gonna make
Hold the plug.
It's gonna make it, it's gonna do it.
Just turn it off and on again.
Unfortunately, I will lose the skin. I know this is weird. Now it's trying to piece together the top. Just kind of to gather information and get some base texture information put together. It's pretty neat that with this application, you just do that. That one's always tricky. There's people that have built rigs to hold their cameras and stuff. We had a guy on campus, him and his buddies, they bought like 60 or 70 Canon, really nice Canon cameras, and they set up this whole rig, and they were doing 3D printing of people and body scans. And nobody really wanted to pay money, right? That's one of the problems with our industry is you've seen the memes all over the place. Nobody wants to pay for art,
it. Yeah.
right? They don't want to pay what it's worth because they just think it's pretty and it's all over the place. Same thing there, here these people were getting, right? So it got a little bit messed up there.
Pinhead Larry.
There is supposed to be a way that you can rescan at a different angle and pick up more information, but there's other ways. I haven't really messed too much with it. Let's see. See if we can get a little more. Because it stitches it together. It does like an auto stitching. Just pull some of the information. It would generate a better scan. But again, if this was something complex, you got to think about the starting procedure. Yeah, in 5 years, 10 years, this is going to be top notch. You'll be able to scan something, and you're going to have that asset. Whereas, now you might have to clean up the scan a little bit. You might have to work with it a little bit. I'm kind of curious as to what it's going to do because I haven't actually changed the asset's position. I'm kind of just working with it in the same position even though I told it to rotate it. So when it auto stitches it together, it'll be interesting to see what it does. I've tried the 1-2 3D sketch. That is a pain. This is so nice that it gives you, even if it's jumping around, knowing what you had to do beforehand. I'm okay with a little bit of sketchiness. More viewing angle. Let's see what this does. It's still doing that top kind of weird. It just doesn't like that information. Or the way it's kind of flickering and stuff. We'll see. And did nothing cool. Let's see, automatic merging. Please wait. It's going to make it worse. Wonder how, should we do green R2D2?
Yes.
Well, it's actually not R2D2, it would be R2D6, I think, because 1 likes D&D, and 2, get a D6 reference. And So if I want to keep that, I can bring it over, and then you can paint the texture, which is pretty cool. You can adjust the sculpture. If we go in there, right, we can soften an area, and we can get rid of that top, or if we can clean it up, we can erase that. I don't know if that's gonna erase. Yeah, that did absolutely nothing. Yikes. Erase. Are you doing anything? No. Smooth. That much. Or I'm guessing that's the finger. I don't know. Maybe we gotta do a bunch there. Who knows? But you've got it, goes into your collection. And you go from there. This is an awesome Hot Wheels car. Check that out. It really liked that at my desk. That was fun.
It was melted.
It's a but guess what though? You know, this was the first attempt.
The last one?
Even worse, right? But again, it's a cool thing, right? So yeah, I started showing this or trying to show it a couple months ago, and all in the idea of resurfacing. You know, why do we resurface? When would we resurface? And this is one of those things that is a great example as to why we would want to resurface. I'm going to try and get this from a better lighting angle. Let's see if we can get one. There's a lot of detail there, and it's the same color as the plate. That might be weird. Who knows? You can think about all the information you know now with ZBrush. You can go in there and clean it up. Get yourself a good starting structure. And what's really nice is it tells you the millimeters. So again, to rebuild with live reference in a scene is pretty cool. Even if I rebuild the whole thing, I'm not trusting myself to look at some reference and move my eyes back and forth to get whatever that structure is that I'm trying to get. Right? I mean, that's a huge thing in itself, is being able to just build over something. Like, how many of you really enjoyed being able to just mask off a part of the clothing that was in your block out and then extracted zero thickness, and most of your shape's already taken care of,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to start and extrude and move verts and try and figure out how you're even going to get the acid out there. I think this is going to work out until we get to the top of his head. And that's when, oh, don't start. I'm sorry, I didn't say. Okay. See, these computer programs, they feel your energy. And when you start getting upset with them, they know. They know what's up. And they're either going to work or not work. What if it doesn't like going back and forth either? You know, part of the learning process is just trying to get this. Oh man, look at that! Did the legs pretty good? And I'm getting excited. This lighting angle seems to be much better than the other one. You know, a lot of people thought that motion capture was going to kill the animation industry. It actually provided a lot more jobs. It wasn't as artistically driven. There's a lot of motion capture technicians, but you know what? Getting paid to do what we do is pretty cool. I guess the hardest part of using this software is letting your shoulder get a little bit of a workout. There we go. I was taking the lazy way and not standing up. Oh man, look at that! He's got a big dent in his head.
Whoa!
Why is he?
He's all beat up.
Battle scars.
But again, there's this button here that's supposed to allow you to then put it down and capture it from a different angle. I haven't really had that work out all that well. But again, look, all my measurements are there. It's bad and it's terrible. And if I had really nice lighting that evened it out and everything, that might work out a little bit better, right? We're working in this classroom with terrible lighting, and I've got this thing that shakes around quite a bit. But if I was gonna build this and I wanted accuracy, that's the model. The measurements are there, the scale is there, the proportions are there. I have landmarks that I can follow. So that's probably why I would use it, even though it's a crappy scan. There's a lot of information there that it gave me. And I have to play around with a little bit more and figure out how to use the other functionality with it, because it didn't really, I don't think it captured, it tried to capture the cables on the back of his legs. Didn't do a good job, but at least I know where they're at, where they go. Right? So, I don't know, I think it's pretty cool just to kind of go from nothing to something in a matter of, a minute or so. And we can look at the information on this asset. Use pinch gestures. So that is 91,000 triangles. And it is 70,000 vertices.
Should do it.
It's pretty cool. Then you want to export it out, you can export it out. This is where it gets into the weird stuff where you gotta buy things. But they just added that $20 for unlimited. Might be, I don't know, I might pull the trigger on that and get into that. So STLs is gonna be for printing. Right, so if I wanted to go right to print, I could do that. I'm not sure I would do that without cleaning it up for a while, But again, it's pretty neat software. There's going to be more like it, and they're going to keep getting better. And this is probably going to be something that modelers will need to get very familiar with. Right? Photogrammetry is what it's more so called. You hear that term quite a bit, photogrammetry. For compositing, it's a really good way to get rocks and other types of things. Because again, even the textures there. So, any questions? Who's gonna go down? Did you? Yeah, you been scanning anything? Okay, cool, yeah. So what you'll need to do now is make sure that you print this out. Right, once you get this piece of paper, you can, print it several times. This is what it reads and it needs to scan. And yeah, good to go. I found lighting matters, and if something is too tall, it doesn't fit within the dome, it'll give you a problem. I'm not sure if you were to expand this, make it larger, possibly. It's going to give you a bigger dome, maybe. I don't know if it reads just the paper size or if it's going to be looking at other elements, but it'd be worth checking out and seeing if you get out there. Yeah, pretty cool software. And look at that, you could run your phone right into your thing, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I need to get a new image because he's 5 and he's almost 6 and she's almost 3. So yeah, that was 2 days after she was home.
Open sketchbook and draw us a picture.
The what?
Open sketchbook and draw us a picture.
Yeah, with my finger. Yeah.
Draw the baby.
No, I got that so my kids can play around with it. Sketchbook, I think, is the one they prefer. The Autodesk one is just a little too crazy. What if I have anything that my son made? But, cool. All right. Well, that's that, and let's talk about some other stuff.
What are we doing today?
I was going to do UVs and normal maps today, and then do hair on Friday. Let's just bang that out through the weekend. Don't save. Goodbye. There we go. Unplug this. That's for Musical Mondays. Musical Mondays is going to turn into a Everybody Sings everything you say. Questions? Okay.
Yeah, if we did an entire lecture, musical style, that would be really good.
Tap dancing.
That would be good.
Well, I don't know if I can do all of it. I'm gonna move my workstation over here now.
There's tap dancing.
I mean, I don't know if we learned much, but it.
Oh, no, I would be so, I would pay attention so much, yes.
You should pay attention.
I do, but like,
But if you were dancing, it'd be.
even
I
more.
think maybe we could more.
Alright, so let me go ahead and look up the Wacom. You guys, is anybody doing the 3D printing competition?
3D printing competition?
Well, what it is it's through the modeling department Facebook page, and it's a 3D printing modeling challenge. So the goal is to model something that would be good for a 3D print, because there's some things you have to think about: thicknesses, scale. If you want details to show up, you've got to push them a little deeper than you normally would, which looks weird on the model but works well for the printer. And then the winner gets their asset printed if they set up the print file, which is pretty easy with that actual thing. But it is on the FS modeling department. I'm one of the judges, and Tim is another judge, and Mike Clayton.
Are you biased?
No. I would expect more from you guys. Realistically, what it is it is a model something awesome challenge, more so than a printing challenge. You just have to think like fingers. You know, when you're modeling for print, you have to think about, you know, what is the printer capable of? Can it print a 500 micron, which is I believe half a millimeter? Can it print that thin shape? So do you have to take your fingers, instead of doing like this, put them together, right? Do you have to, instead of having the arm, because they're in some sort of weird pose, you have to tuck the arm in so it can hold. If you have a cape, should you mesh the arm with the back of the cape with the arm so it gives it some support structure? There's a lot of things to think about. That's what we'll be looking at in the modeling challenge. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Wanted to jump in there, get any more information on it here. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about the resurfacing stuff? Have you run into any problems? I know the submission.
Just bad topology, that's user error.
Okay. Well, I mean, I usually go through a file where I open up something and talk about it, turn the lights down. Talk about reworking an asset, because sometimes if the geometry is not all that nice, it's good to know some techniques to fix it up. You know, how to look at it and what to think about. So we can take a look at that and then jump into UV's normal maps and then save hair and final submission for Friday. Go from there. I did, I think, grades for week 3 were up.
I'm surprised you went that fast.
Yeah, well, when I get everything in order, you know, coming off that big month last month, things go pretty quickly. But overall, not bad. Grades did, you know, as we start relying on individual elements more so than blanking it with more elements, you know, grades go a little bit down. I saw some props that were a little on the simplistic side. I wish they were a little bit more complex. You know, you want to think about how you're going to model them, how to make them a little bit more complex, or, you know, in general, some of it was just bad selection. I did see some really nice stuff, some really nice facial details. I think people are afraid to up-res, right? A little bit more geometry would have helped. If I can still see the faceting, you know, here and there, probably need a little bit more geometry, especially when you're getting into that higher level shape, right? You're gonna want a little bit more geometry. We'll talk about how to bring that stuff down on Friday, how to get it ready for submission. You might go from 12 million to 3 million, which is what we want for each character in the submissions. Wrinkles, very soft. You know, I saw a lot of softness, a lot of people not taking advantage of putting in clothing seams, which is, if you don't see a lot of wrinkle information on your outfit, it's a good get. You know, it kind of gives you that thing to step forward with. and kind of raise the asset. I also saw, unfortunately, online versus campus, I saw a lot of people, they pushed too far the previous week and kind of didn't know where to push this week. Or week 3. I will say online, a lot of people online making hair, and unfortunately that didn't count towards facial advancement. So, right, it might be there for a stand-in, but that's what week 4 is for when we get into doing that hair. But pretty decent. Had some strong A's, some really strong B's. Yeah, happy overall. I think it was one of the better months for week 3. So thank you for that. And thank you again for all the emails that are, hey, look at my stuff. We set up a meeting, that kind of stuff. Oh wait, no, I'm just kidding. I had like 1 or 2. Yeah. So, don't forget that isn't out. Well, actually, at this point, we're almost running a little too late because we're going to be closing up this month, getting ready for next month. Kind of deal. So, let's get into troubleshooting geometry and maybe some workflows to fixing that up, and then jump right into UVs and normal maps. I promise you, I'm going to show you a super painless way to get the UVs done for this assignment. It's silly. If you get the resurfacing done, it is silly for you not to get the UVs and normal maps done. Like, those things, we're talking 15 minutes tops to get those banged out and ready to go. So, and if you feel differently after we talk about what we're going to talk about, please ask, because I'm tired of seeing those not done and people losing some good core points for those things. So let's see what we've got. We'll jump into this. We'll get into stuff. Where was the? I don't remember what I had there. That's okay. I'll do it over.
Open it, find out.
Quite sure. I don't even think it was mine. It might have been someone else's. What's funny is, as assets become, or programs, I feel like I struggle with almost the same stuff that I did back in 2003 on my old desktop. Because they're always pushing the limits. You get big, strong computers, but then they push the limits of the software, and you run into the same crashing and slowing down that you always run into.
And you start blaming the program.
Yeah, or you blame the matrix, because that's really what's controlling us, right? So, this was, somebody had asked, hey, can you take a look at my asset? I said, sure, send me the files, right? It's something like this, it's hard to really gauge based off of imagery. So they sent me the file, and I asked, hey, this is a really good example to use in lecture. I'll give you feedback as well as, use this for a teaching opportunity. So this was their head that they created, and at first glance, right, when I look at it, I look at the 4 rules right away. What does the shape look like? Do I notice, does anything jump out at me as having density parameterization issues? Do I see some weird topology? I look for those main 4 things, and then I start to investigate. So if something grabs my attention, let's turn the wireframe on shaded. If something grabs, maybe, are you going to work? No. Try again. No, it's cool. We'll just use another program that does work, right? Something grabs my attention. Right? These are things that instantly pull me into the model and go, we need to look a little further, right? So what's wrong with this area?
Permutation.
Yep. You're getting better. Parameterization is a little bit messy. It's kind of like sternocleidomastoid, right?
I won't even try to.
Say it.
That's that sternocleidomastoid. See, I messed myself up. Sternos for short, right? That's that muscle right there. One, the density from this zone to this zone is too far away from each other, and then the parameterization's all messed up. We're getting some kiting on this polygon, And it's just not enough geometry running through there. And that neck needs to move quite a bit, so thinking beyond, I want clean, uniform topology as much as I can get in the neck, because that's going to stretch. Unfortunately, this character didn't really have much of a neck when they sculpted it, but it works out. Okay, so what's wrong with this area right here?
Gigantic star junction.
How many points does it have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is only a 5-point. Star junctions are a concern. So let's see, what's going on here? Not wrap, I'm not going to wrap for you. We have one star junction right next to another star junction, right next to another star junction. That's 3 star junctions within the same realm. So star junctions is an issue, but what else is wrong with it? I'll circle it. One of my theories on geometry, and I learned it very early when I was learning, geometry has a job. Right? Every piece of geometry, you should be aware of what it's doing. So when I look at this and I see 3 star junctions, a diamond junction, right next to another diamond junction, I kind of go, huh? Why? Why is that there? Okay, so this goes into geometry cleanliness. Why is that topology there? Is it there for a shape? Not really. Right? Is it there to condense geometry? Yes, but is it a good condension or a bad condension? In my eyes, it's a bad one because the densities, right? We already learned that down here the density was different than here, and that kind of trails up into the side of the face. So we're trying to pull down the density too quickly, so we end up with a junction here and a junction there. 2 junctions, really not a good reason to have them there, and we have them there as a result of issues in other realms of creating good topology, right? The cleanliness, the density parameterization. So those, I want to put them on there and say, all right, so number 1, the neck. Number 2, revisit that. Number 3, what's going on here? This one's a little bit more interesting as to why this is a problem. So this would be number 3. I make myself a list, a cleanup list, because to get it right the first time is usually impossible. But to do it, get it done, completed, so I can evaluate and then make changes and make it better, that's more the pathway. So what's going on here is we have an edge going up and then turning and going this way. And then we have another edge that's coming this way, turning up. It's kind of terminating, but we'll just say it's going through. So we've got 2 edges crisscrossing each other. And again, keeping things simple, it'd be better if we needed to put those, why not just run them, the box junctions together? Because they're kind of terminating, this one's terminating edge this way, this one's terminating edge in the opposite direction, so why not work them together? Why have the box junctions offset from each other? Why not keep them a little bit more uniform? That's a little bit of a higher level idea, but it's something that, again, it caught my attention when I first looked at the asset, and I said, something I want to think about. The other thing is, this one I didn't circle up first, but number 4 on this is the way the geometry is coming out of the back of the head. Now, this is something that I'm concerned with because it goes against what I normally use as topology. But if I ever see this on a model that you give me, and I go, that's not what I'm used to, but does it work? Right? I'll always evaluate it, does it work? I'm more of a fan of where's the base of the skull? Let's have an edge, right? So we'd end up with something, again, a little bit more uniform. Right, something that gave me a more definitive separation, because what's happening is this edge here is wrapping from mid-level on the head, it comes down, and then it turns here, it goes that way. Right? This is, because of the edge flow, it's one of the reasons that's causing this density and parameterization issue. What I like to think about when I'm modeling is, how can I separate? So they got themselves into trouble in a couple different ways. One, they went a little bit further into the neck than they were supposed to. Right? If you agree, you're only supposed to do the base of the skull, underneath, right? I pointed that out in the last class. They decided to include some of the neck in there. Had they gotten rid of that, I may not have noticed this as an issue. I might have been like, looks okay. But when I'm thinking about a model, I'm thinking about sections, and this is kind of how I start to develop what's going to happen. So all this geometry here, all these junctions, let's see, I might bring one more. Of course, yeah. Right, keeping the neck more uniform is going to help. Right, I can bring all that geometry straight down to the neck, just like if I'm modeling this to separate it. Okay, and if you're paying attention to your edges, it does make. Remember on the Slimer model, I said there's no clear center line running through the hand. That makes separating the UVs a lot more difficult. If I'm thinking about further processes, I can think about, all right, well, if I was going to separate the head, I now have a very clean separation line that I can separate the head from the neck. Right? So I'm kind of trying to break apart the model that way into a logical way that it might be built, or again, for future procedures. All right? So let's go into making some of these corrections and how we might go about it. I know we have the models in here somewhere. Show geometry.
I don't like that bottom half. You're right.
Who's that? Okay. Let's see. All right, so we're gonna grab that. Put it all there. Bring that up. This is the mesh. Where did they do a good job? They did a good job capturing the shapes of the model. I think they could have done a little bit more structural geometry for the eyebrow there. You know, but I think the geometry works well enough. They kept the nostrils, the eye, and the mouth open. We're going to take this, and we're just going to go ahead and lock it down onto, we'll lock it down there, grab this, and then we're just going to load it right into the quadra again. Okay, that's one thing I think people kind of forget is, you know, oh, once it's blocked, you can always just build onto it. You don't have to constantly work on just the same part all the time. Run into problems updating. All right, so let's take care of, let's see. First things first, I'm going to get rid of what I don't need. So
Okay.
I'm actually going to do that. This. I don't need anything that's going to complicate. Reminds me of that lizard creature from Star Trek. It's that famous battle scene between Kirk. It's probably one of the worst fighting scenes ever.
Yeah. With the star comes off.
Yes.
Let's start from what good work.
Right, so I'm going through it. I'm just kind of simplifying, right? Focus on what I need to focus on, then go into making it better. Back to the asset, lock it down, and add a quadra. Okay? Okay, so now we get into, I want to add a little bit more geometry to here. So if we take it through 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, so this would be my first concern, my second concern, third concern, and then fourth concern. I'm going to work it that way. So whenever I'm going to add geometry, I like to make a hole, right? That allows me to just throw in some extra stuff without it ripping through the model. Biggest thing I see when people are resurfacing is they'll be zoomed in on their model, which is great. You gotta get there and zoom in on the model, and then they'll just add an edge loop. They have no clue where it went. They're like, hey, it looks good in this little section of the model, but they forget to go check out where it went, and I can see it ripping through the head and looping around on itself, and they end up with a band, right? Which then equals a crease, and it's harder to work with. So I always like to kind of make a little stopping point. And then I think we're going to need a little bit more geometry over here. So, because if we look at the density, right, I don't want to take geometry out. So this is going to be my gauge. This is going to be, this is the highest resolution area on the model. So that now is going to set the tone for the rest of the model. So we've got this and we've got this. So when I look over here, I go, the corner of the mouth, it's a pretty deforming area, right? A pretty highly, it's going to open up the extreme. It's already stretching. So if it's already stretching, probably can use a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and drop in 2 more into the corner there. My targeting is terrible. There we go. There we go. Okay. We're going to need, that's going to create another issue. But I think we can do it. Some issues get tissues, others don't. It depends on how you look at them. Okay, so again, looking for opportunity, looking for an area that I can drop in that edge and focus, right? Again, if you have ADD, you're going to be all over this model. So I always try and rein myself back in, focus on what I need. So I threw that one in there. I'm going to leave that. And I can smooth this out and kind of get rid of that topology pretty easily. Okay. Just kind of extend that up. All right. So as I move up, this geometry is feeling better. I'm starting to get into some areas that aren't. So I'm gonna, again, sometimes it's easier to just get rid of stuff.
Be like that sometimes.
What?
It'd be like that sometimes.
You feel like that sometimes?
That too.
Gotcha. Roger.
It is one of those days. Oh my God.
Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop that in. And let's see. You might find yourself redoing stuff. Right? You're kind of like, you know what? I just took something out. Now I need to put it right back in there and those working shapes. So I'm nudging these up because my new geometry is going to need an area that I can run it in. And I need to position a star junction. I need to have a good understanding of where that's going to be. Okay, so now we count connections. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 4 extra edges up here.
You let you know,
That brings up a good point, though. Sometimes, you'll be looking at your topology, and it's hard to see the solution. But if you just nudge some stuff around, like I'll grab some geometry every now and then, I'll just kind of move it, because I might see it from a different perspective. And then boom, there's the solution. It pops up. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold shift. And somebody might be like, oh, that's a lot of geometry you're throwing in there. How's that gonna work? Good old smoothing is gonna help me out. Now, be careful if I smooth into the eye, I might be moving topology that was meant to be there. Something to watch out for. Watch your number, keep that eye on.
Can I make the script so we can just relax next time you press the button?
How to make that script?
You know, it's possible.
You just wanted to relax everything?
Yeah.
Well, there is the relax, you can flood a surface with relax if you do the surfaces and you use this sculpt geometry tool. You can flood and it'll relax everything. But the problem with that is that you're relaxing areas that need to stay where they're supposed to be. So I'm going to go make this a little bit bigger. Relax. Perfect. That's definitely where. Okay, but now you can see the topology feels a little bit more evenly spaced throughout. We don't have an abrupt change. There still is a change from smaller detail zones, micro zones to macro zone, right? But it's not just abrupt, okay? So that's worked out, and the geometry is a lot cleaner, which is good. Now, let's look at this area here. Okay, so in this one, it really depends. Do we want to add let's see. Let's make this. Let's move it over one. Move this over one. And then. Okay, so all I did there was reposition the junction. Let's put the junction in line with the other junction. As you'll notice here, I tried to pay attention to where this star junction was and made sure that they were on the same edge. Not a thing you have to do all the time, but it does make selection and it makes working with the model later on a little bit easier, something to think about. The same thing here, star junctions on the same line. All right, so we took care of 2 of the issues, actually 3 of the issues so far. Now we go back into the back of the skull here, and go ahead and separate those areas, and see if we can't get a little more. other thing to be thinking about, again, with the geometry has a job. If you look at this point here that I just deleted, what is this edge's job? If I look, I can see a clear line where the mandible transitions into the neck. So what I'm going to do is delete this, move this over, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, what I'm thinking it's supposed to be doing. And then following suit. Love the kill zone right here, kill zone in the ear. That gives me a nice place to put points. And of course we want to always move things around. You know, I'm not really sure what this is supposed to be. If it's a cartoony ear and something really simple, yes.
We're supposed to build the ear off before we get these.
The then,
No.
Okay. That's stuff.
no, it's what, it's true.
I want to get to you meeting. I don't really like your mesh.
Who is that?
It doesn't.
Did you ever see?
Yes.
I love your meetings. Oh, I hate your meshing. I prefer your meetings.
Here's a bunch of negativity about this awesome.
Bro, I remember.
Yes, we all do.
This was you in the head.
You tell me. Okay, so you tell me. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of trying to box this out. Making sure that you get those pieces. You can see, I struggle with this tool once in a while. It chugs or acts funky. Okay, so this geometry, I do a lot of fixing and then cleaning, just like with sculpture. Aggressive, smooth, right? Aggressive and then smooth. And then go ahead and activate the B key. A little bit larger shift, and let's just kind of smooth that out. See, I go all the way through that. Not really a fan of this topology for the forehead. I don't want to go through and change too much though. And look at that extra edge, really kind of allowed me to move some stuff on the forehead there. Go through. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the rest out of there. That new service pack for Maya. You're gonna have all kinds of stuff. So do you see the difference between what was there and what we have now? Does it make sense? Not make sense?
Makes perfect sense. My wife actually struck my head so it can be even if I'm not accurate.
Now we might have just lost
That happens a lot.
Well, my fan was running real high. I mean, I am trying to record and do all the other stuff, so.
You just go to sleep when you see Maya. You close your eyes.
That's how I think the costume.
Oh, that's a scary feeling. You just close your eyes and you see
No, I
Maya.
just close my eyes and I screw it around, you know.
No, I just see the Maya.
All right, so you can see here again, I don't know, it's frozen, I'm gonna shut it down. You can see that it's cleaner, it's a little more simplistic, right? You know, yeah, there was a lot of moving around, changing things, but I'm always using those rules of topology to kind of guide me through creating geometry. I kind of let that bleed into other areas. It kind of just starts to flood those with better topology. And the more even your geometry is, the more solutions you'll run into as you're troubleshooting. So again, what you got there, you will want to mirror this over, center up. Before you mirror it over, you're going to want to make sure you snap your center line just like you would anything else. Make sure your center line's nice and clean. Mirror it over, adjust it back to the topology, right? What I would recommend doing is reattaching it and either nudging all your vertices really quickly while it's locked down, and so you activate quad draw, lock down your high res again, and smooth with that on, and it'll adapt all the vertices that aren't aligned with the surface. Okay? But yeah, it seems to be nice and Right, so make yourself a list, get it done, right? First and foremost, get it done. Then make yourself a list of how do I make it better, right? So when it's first finished, it might be a C. Then you give it a revisit, now you bring it up to a B. You revisit it again if you have time, you take it to an A, right? But what is important? Get it done. All right, so getting into the next phase, we're just gonna go right into the normal maps and the, what's the other thing we're looking at? UV, normals and UVs. That's it. You still trying to come up with a I hear iTunes, maybe that's what was the problem.
That's what it is.
iTunes. I'm just so, with the amount of, one, it tells me to update my machine all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't have permissions to update certain things it needs to update. So I can't stop it from telling me to update all the time. And then it always tells me that the backup failed for iCloud. I don't want it. Who cares? I don't want it to. I
never use that.
3 terabyte hard drive, just throw everything on that. And then every time I plug my phone in, my phone even thinks about connecting to my computer. I'll come to iTunes and I gotta hit cancel 6 times. It's just annoying. It's so, it drives me insane. But that's just my little rant. And we'll get back into this. Okay? Nope, I am good now. Ready to go. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is just a very simple UV, the head, the resurface geometry, that's it. That's all we're going to be resurfacing, UV. We're going to do a real quick normal map bake. It's going to be just a very simple type of procedure, and then you would amplify this on the rest of your assets. So I'm going to bring this up. Here we've got the heads. We've got our resurfaced head and our high-res head. Okay? Now, let it open up there. Hoping to see some vests. You guys know what? It's Full Sail Friday. That'll be the last day I see them. Online hasn't sent me any pictures of them in vests, or cat shirts, or Marvel shirts on Monday. Doesn't matter. You're supposed to be support the deal.
I don't own any vests or Marvel shirts.
Yeah, there was a day I didn't own any vests either.
I think you've told this story.
Yeah, I have. I took like $3 and went to the I went to the, what do they call those stores? The thrift stores and bought some vests. Yeah, half price Wednesday. All right, so again, we've got our resurface. Okay. The high res, you probably don't need the high res, but just keep it in the scene. I mean, you're gonna need the high res when you get to the normal mapping. So just put it on a layer, make sure you can hide it when needed. Okay. This is what we're working with. Both sides of the head, ready to go. So let's take a look, see if there's anything there. I think it's gonna have UVs to some extent. But yours will not, right? This is gonna be our goal. This has got some issues in the mouth, but the way I'm gonna show you, you won't have to worry about that. I'm doing more of the pulling the top of the head forward and then unwrapping the back of the head. There's a lot of different ways. I see a lot of people going with the one single split down the middle, and it kind of pulls the head out this way. I'm not a fan of that one. If you ever want to show the character without hair, I'd rather have seams running with the temporal crest, so the top of the head is nice and clean. Because when you do a split here and you just pull all this apart, it really distorts your texture. So if you ever do a bald character, that's probably not the way you want to go. But for characters with the hair, everything's going to be hidden underneath there anyway, so, brought it this long. What we're looking for, though, is a good layout. Is this a good collage setup in my 0 to 1? Not really, right? Going at an angle like this, the only reason I'm doing it is, think about it, purpose dictates process. We want to maximize, we're doing just the head, we want to maximize usage of 0 to 1, because any space inside of 0 to 1 that you're not covering with UVs is wasted resolution. Okay, so I want to maximize. So again, it's just the head. I can rotate it 45 degrees, put it in there, and we're good to go. And it's going to work out really nicely and generate whatever we need it to generate. Okay, but if I was doing a character, if I was doing something else, I remember working with, I was doing a big feasting table for this one game, and we were on a live session, and the texture artist was there, and they thanked me for thinking about the UVs and placing them in a logical way, right? So the top of the table, all the pieces for the top of the table here was all vertical, horizontal. Now, what did I know about the texturing process that led me to lay them out that way? They were hand painting the textures. And a lot of people, when they hand paint the textures, they want a vertical, horizontal layout. They want to make sure that they know where things are. So I even went in and color coded, what was this, what was that? And gave them that, right? So again, having that information helps with what you're doing. So that's why when you look at this, and if you were to show somebody like, why do you got it at a 45 degree angle? It's weird. You can go, well, it's just maximize into real quick normal map bake, so I'm not that concerned with it. Okay, it's good to know, that kind of stuff so you can talk about it. People don't think you just gotta mess something up, right? I definitely want the 0 to 1 being used. Again, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say this because I want to see if people that are watching the archives are actually watching it with volume. Because if they're not watching it with volume, I'm going to see a lot of the following. So basically, laying out the UVs, you don't want to put them down here and only down there. I get that a lot. I get a lot of models with the UVs down here, and all of this is wasted, right? So now you're going to paint a 2048, but you're only getting a 1024 packed down in the corner, so you're wasting all of that other, again, resolution. I can get a 1024 over here, 1024 over there. I can get all these resolutions throughout that space if I utilize that space, okay? So don't just put it down there, not a good idea. Don't just use the auto map. That'll get you 0 on UVs. If you're doing it as a means to getting just a, like I don't understand UVs, let me just auto map it so I can get a normal map, that's cool, but the UV section of the grade will be a 0 because you're literally hitting a button and letting it do the work for you. So we're gonna negate that. And trust me, the way I'm gonna show you is pretty easy, okay? All right, so again, if we see people packing it down there, we know didn't listen to it before. I'm getting a suspicion that that's what's going on, because of certain things that are happening. Right, so we'll go into here, and by default, you're not going to have any UV information. Right, so what you're going to have, we're going to go into UV, and I'm just going to delete my UVs, because this is what you're going to start with. I think I closed it. You're going to have this, nothing. Now, if you go in the old school, and you want to do a practice where you box model ahead, you're going to have a big giant mess of UVs in there. It's going to look like somebody took a bunch of toothpicks and threw them on the table and said, there you go, make sense of that, right? But either way, whether you have 0 UVs or you have a big mess of UVs, you need to make sense of this before you start using tools. So what we're going to do right away is just a planar map. And the hardest part about the planar map is selecting the direction. Whatever is the biggest, most important area, just hit it up that way. Okay? The next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to pay attention to my seams. I want to make sure my seams are where they need to be. I want to make sure that when I cut, that it actually cut. I want to make sure when I move and sew, that it actually moves and sews. All right, so I'm going to go to display, polygons, and I'm going to turn on texture border edges, just so I make sure that I get those texture border edges. You can see them all around the edge. They're brighter colored. If you want them a little bit bigger, go right back to where you turned them on, go to edge width, and you can make them a little bit larger. Okay, so I like to turn those on. If I'm modeling, I turn on border edges. If I'm texturing or laying out UVs, I turn on texture border edges to give me some information. All right, so the next thing is knowing where your seams are supposed to go. You need to know that information so you know where to cut. Figure that out. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a little slip here to release the pressure on the chin. I'm going to split temporal crest back, so right about here, across, and then straight down. Create like a goalpost in the back of the head. Right? And that works out really nicely. And then I can unfold it. Now, if you've got a character with ears, think about how you would model it. If you've got big bunny ears sticking off the character, then what I would do is I would cut around the ear, separate the UVs for the ear, find the common edge that runs along the side of the ear, cut down one of them, and then unfold the ear like that. Right? Think about how stuffed animals are made. Think about where the seams are, and that kind of helps you figure out where your seam should go here. And if you're like, I don't understand any of that, there's this great thing, came out a couple years ago, that you can search about anything and get imagery, tutorials, Google, right? Use Google and type in UVs for a rabbit, UVs for a character with long ears, UVs for a character with a muzzle, right? Dog UVs, it's different. This is easy, it's a simple face. When you get into something with an elongated muzzle, it changes the idea. Because you don't want to take all this information, like on this, when I'm done with it, all the mouth area is going to be flattened. You can't take something with that much 3D space and flatten it down without getting distortion or some sort of texturing issue. Right? So you have to figure out how are you going to cut it. Are you going to cut down here and then open the head up like that? Right? If you want to think about gruesome stuff, how would you skin that animal? Right? So I used to always tell a story where I'm going to go get a full sleeve tattoo, but I don't want to sit in that chair for that many hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the skin off of my arm, put it on a wooden plaque, and give it to the artist, let them tattoo it, and then we're going to put it back on. Right? The skin shrinks. Right? I want to make sure that when I cut it, I hide where the scars are going to be. Because when I put the skin back on my arm, the scars are going to be there. I want to make sure they're hidden. Okay? So I'm going to think about that, and then I'm going to think about how can I give it to them? Because if you ever written out a balloon and then pop the balloon, everything shrivels up there, or if you write on it and blow it up and stretch it, it's the same kind of idea. You know, where are you going to get stretching? Where can you get stretching? All that stuff. Now we're a little spoiled because our programs now, Substance Painter, fixes a lot of this stuff for you, but it doesn't fix texel density issues, right? Or pixel density issues. You familiar with that term? Should be. I know you've heard it before. I know what other classes you're teaching.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so, you know, if you've only got this many pixels, you got 100 pixels here on the model, you got 500 over here, well, that area will naturally be more more detailed, or can be more detailed in the area that's trying to stretch and fill in pixels. So think about that as you're laying out the surfaces. All right, so do some research, find yourself a good layout. If you want to copy this on your basic heads, go ahead and do that. It works out just fine. I'm going to go to Edge, and since I already know where my seams are going to go, it makes this process real easy. If I want to cut, select, cut, I can do that, or I can make my selections all the way through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to bring this up to the edge that goes right to the top of the ear. Same on the other side. Okay, and then I don't really have to do this, but I'm going to let's give it a little bit of stretch. Come over here, cut. The beautiful thing is I can see exactly where those seams are because I turn on texture border edges. Things like if you resurface into the eye, the ocular cavity, separate right on the inside of the eyelid, separate just on, as the nose starts going up into the nostril, separate right where the lips are, right? You want to keep those extra pieces, you can kind of put them off to the side, but you don't want to try and unfold so much of that. All right, so we got that. Now we go right into modify. We're going to go unfold. We're going to use unfold 3D. Iterations 5. Map size 2048. So apply. Go ahead and apply just in case we have to do something. Oh, probably would help if I actually selected some UVs. That might be it. Okay, done. Okay, so it's finished. We want to zoom in, double check it. Don't forget, turn on your. I'm not worried about imperfections like that. No big deal. Eyes look good. Don't have any overlapping. Good. Okay, so if you want to go through and move them or anything like that, make sure you're utilizing your rotates and things like that, right? You can go ahead and rotate 15 degrees, or so it's rotating by default. But you can rotate it however you want. Whatever makes you happy. Really didn't have to rotate it at all because it's the same thing. And we're going to go in there and we're going to position it. Scale it as much as I can. Now, I can notice if I rotate just a little bit, it buys me more space. I'm always trying to get as much as I can out of that. And so, there we go, we're good. I mean, that is ridiculously easy, right? And I don't know, I'm just give you big cuts, unfolded, you're hitting some buttons, yay, we're good to go. All right, so we got that there. And I would save it. UV head for normal maps or whatever, right? Keeping these things going. And now is the normal mapping part. Okay, so in the same scene, I'm going to go ahead and take care of my UVs, my resurfacing, my UVs, and my normal maps. And then when we build our final scene, we'll just import this into the final scene and place it where it needs to be placed. Resource our textures and stuff like that. All right, so the normal map, real simple. Again, it is very simple. I think it's a simple process. You've got your high res, you've got your low res. I'm going to go ahead and delete history on these assets. Right? It's one thing I do catch people forget. They delete their history, their modeling history, but then they forget to delete the normal mapping, or not normal mapping, but the UVing history. You got to always remember to kind of go through your scene and get rid of that stuff. Okay, you want to make sure the models fit. Double check your shapes. Make sure you have enough geometry to hold the main shapes, right? normal maps aren't there to give us new geometry. It's to fake the illusion. So if we can't hold the silhouettes with the geometry we rebuilt, it's just going to fall apart, right? So let's go in and set up the normal. I'm going to make this. Let's see what we get. There's low res. Make sure you're in one mode. Make sure that you soften your normals on both assets. Because if you don't, all that faceting will come with it. All right. Remember, you're pulling that normal information, that shading information, so if it's faceted, it's going to be faceted on you. Right, well, yep. This is the way it works. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go in here, we're going to grab that low res. You don't really have to have it selected before you do the next process, but sometimes it helps. All right, we're going to go to rendering, lighting and shading, transfer maps. You should have already done this in shaders and lighting and whatnot, so it's just kind of a refresher. There's going to be one thing that we're going to change. But I think they push you to run your tangent space. You run object space versus tangent space for hard surface, non-deforming stuff sometimes. That might be the thing.
Morse code?
Yeah, I do like Morse code. Morse code is super.
What did that say?
It said turn the volume off on your phone. That's what it said.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right, so we're going to go in here. The low res poly surface, that's fine. Our source mesh, so your target mesh is your resurface low res topology. Your source mesh is going to be your high res. You're going to tell it normal map. Probably your settings. If you haven't done anything major to Maya, all your settings will probably be there from before, so you just have to alter a couple things. If you don't have a normal map, click on normal map and it'll give you a normal map output. Tell it where to go. Now, if you want to do this last, you can, and there would be one benefit to doing it last, and that's that you can put the normal map where it needs to go. You can name it, put it where it needs to go, and that sourcing concern, right? Sourcing the image, the normal map image is no longer a concern because you're sourcing it from where it needs to go. Okay? What happens with most cases is people rename, they move the file, it no longer sources correctly. You are not going to be submitting a project directory, you're going to be submitting a folder with a bunch of assets in it. And it needs to source that way, okay? For me, just to check it, work with it, I'm not worried about the resourcing of the image, right? I'm just going to go ahead and push this right there to the center, or push it right to where it needs to go. Desktop, check it, move it, change it, source it, anyway. What is this? This is going to be map. Okay. I'm putting it out. I don't want it to be that. There's really, like somebody go TIFF target or whatever you're using it for. There's no special reason why I use a TIFF. It just works. It's a clean image. I'm used to using them to save layer information out of Photoshop. So I just stay with this. Okay, so we got that going to desktop. There we go. TIFF, tangent space normals instead of object space. So make sure you're on tangent space. Maya common outputs 2048. The assignment does say no less than 1024, right? We don't need any 4096s or anything like that. So 1024, it's a little pixelated. 2048 seems to be nice and clean. World space, sampling quality 4, filter size 4, right? This is your blurring. I noticed that when people are using messages, they tend to, or did I say messages?
Yeah.
I did, okay. When people are using normal maps, they tend to try and get too much out of normal. They try and put all this fine line details and wrinkles in there. And that's better suited for a displacement map or a bump map. You get more control, a little bit cleaner, you can stack them easier. Whereas a normal map is there to give you a more rounded volume type feel out of the asset. And in a lot of cases, you may not use a normal map, you're probably gonna use a displacement map, right? We just do a normal map because you're familiar with it and it's easy to go. We don't have to render it or anything to get the visual. But what happens is they try to put the stuff in and then they blur it. They end up blurring it and they lose all their detail. Right? And if you keep it too sharp, you get all the noise and stuff like that. So, but this would be, it's a real easy place to start. Medium sample quality and a filter size of 4. Just kind of good place to get going. The advanced options, that's going to be only if you need them, right? So the first thing is going to be, for most of us, closest to envelope is going to work fine. If you need to change it, right, you just look at what the inside envelope. I remember talking to an artist that I don't know what half this stuff does. I just click buttons until it looks the way I need it to look, right? You got to know what your target is, and you can kind of bounce through these options to get it to what it needs to be. The next thing is max search depth. This is something that might give you, if you don't have enough geometry, the models don't sit close enough together, you might have to adjust your max search depth to get a better result, because what you'll get is dead spots in your normal map. You'll get little, like, look like puddles of no detail. That's because it doesn't know, it's not looking far enough. Now you don't want to take this and jam it all the way to the other side or even in the middle. That will increase the amount of time it takes. So, you know, mine set to 0, the model fits pretty well. We'll look at it and see if there's any problems, but you can kind of pull that up a little bit if you're getting some issues. But again, you shouldn't have to go into there unless there's, you know, big issues with the geometry and stuff like that. So we're just going to go ahead and bake. Going to let it do its thing. One of the big signs, if it doesn't bake right away, within a minute or two, usually what it is your UVs are not your 0 to 1 space. They're out away from the 0 to 1. The other issue is you didn't lay out your UVs. Some people get real excited and they try and do this process before they lay out their UVs. So if you're like, man, this has been going for 5 minutes, what's going on? For a model that's got a lot of stuff on it, right? You got pieces jammed together, you're trying to pull that normal information. It might take a while, but for this, it shouldn't take but, you know, a minute or two. Okay? That does every month. My favorite emails are, I waited 6 hours until the normal map was done, and then it gave me nothing, just a purple image. Your UV's laid out in 0 to 1. Double check that. Let me know. We really don't hear anything back. And if you're waiting 6 hours for this, I wouldn't wait 6 minutes before I started investigating the problem, right? 6 minutes, that's way too much. All right, so let's take a look. We got it. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we got here. I think it's going to be amazing. Let's see. Oh, I need that. Let's go ahead and get rid of the high res and see what beautiful. It looks so much better. Look at that, looks just like the high res. Let's move the high res and see what it looks like. Love it. All this extra detail we got. Nothing. Let's hit the 6 key, load it up, and now it's like your twins. Right? So, no normal map with the normal map. Everything just kind of tightens up. We start getting that little bit of micro detail as far as the forms, right, in the corners of the eye, around the nose, in the chin, but without spending all that topology. Back here, you can't see the faceting on the skull. Okay? So let's take a look at the map to see if there's any issues. Oh, what's that? Mouth, we got some issues. Oh, what's that? Another issue. It's coming from the ears. Looking around to see if there's anything else, any dead spots. I don't see anything. Everything looks pretty clean other than those, the mouth and the ear. Okay? So let's keep messing around with settings until we get those right. Right? That's the troubleshooting. Spend a couple hours trying to fix it up. No, use Photoshop. Especially if your asset gave you 97% of everything accurately, fix it up in Photoshop instead of trying to, I mean, if you notice something like, oh, I didn't soften my normals, that's one thing. Fix the normals, go from there. But if you get some discrepancies, and you know, you're like, man, there's some problems there, it is in most cases easier to just open up Photoshop, do some smudge work, and go from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, Photoshop. It's hard for me to hit that first note. My voice cuts out. Alright, so we're in Photoshop, your favorite program, I know you love it. And I'm just gonna go ahead and zoom in, and I'll fix half, usually what I do. Fix half here. And you know, again, because of what it is, we can do this pretty quickly. We can clone and stamp, we can paint, you can paint normal information. NVIDIA actually makes a normal map filter. So if you paint in grayscale, you can throw a normal map filter on. It's really good for some hard surface stuff. But I'm going to utilize the smudge tool just because it's easy and I can control. Right? I can kind of pull some of that. But if you take this further, think about this asset. If there was a seam there behind the ear, I've totally botched the seam. The seam is going to show up because there's no way to get the pixel information to look the same. But if there was an ear, there would be ear topology, so we might not even get this discrepancy. We're getting this discrepancy because there's nothing there. But for our purposes, we want the best out of what we have. So this is a good way to do that. We're going to go down here to the look area, and again, the power of the smudge. I can keep some of that color information constant. I'm pulling the color from above that lip area down and through. So that's why it works out so nicely. A lot of this information is inside the mouth anyway. In some cases, you can completely get rid of that color information. Okay, looks good. I would do the other side, of course, but for time purposes, I'm going to just save that. Back into Maya, or flip your fingers, as a lot of people do, swipe them back and forth, different workspaces. Now it's time to re-source this, you know, updated. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the trouble areas. All right, so grab the asset, material attributes. You can go through the hyper shader if you need to. Go to Lambert 1, you'll see bump mapping, input, right? You can either, if you need to resource, right? So if you're in the process of building your final submission, you need to resource, you're gonna have to do this anyway. You're gonna want to go back and find that new, or find where the new asset is, the new map is. So I can either do that, click on it, it's gonna update it. You see the lip is grain now, or if I just click the reload, it would have done the same thing. So I think it's going to be sourced with that. So right, but at that point, I can just go in there, fix up the other side. Right, the ear. You can see there's a little bit of funkiness there around that area. It's a little soft. The normal's obviously not working, but it looks clean looking at it in the scene. Right? That's the UV normal. I mean, you got to think, if you're not talking while doing it, right? So please get that done. It's worth a good chunk, you know, to kind of have all that section of the grading taken care of. It's so easy to do it. You know, give yourself that time to take care of it. Cool. Questions, comments, concerns? Even after that, you just click some buttons and boom, it's done. Yeah. You know what you do? Here's what you do. You grab 4 people that are doing the UVing process, and you all sit down and go, okay, we got 30 minutes, let's UV our heads. And then when you get stuck, you go, hey, what was that? What was it? I can't remember what he said in class. I know that this works, or mine's not working right. You got somebody right there to help, and then in 30 minutes, everybody's got their heads UV'd. Then you go, all right, next 30 minutes, let's make our normal maps. And then in an hour, you've got the UV's normal maps taken care of.
What if they get mad at that group though?
They might, then, you either have to evaluate what caused that tick-tock, you know? If it was you, it might be
They
an
don't know
issue.
even.
You know? Yes.
Do we have love to do?
I believe so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it should be on the schedule, because next class, all you have is, your next class is just the integrated.
That's on Friday. We have lecture on Friday, we should have lab for that.
Do we not have Black Friday?
What?
Do we have Black Friday?
Let's look. Let's make sure, all right, so I'm gonna say goodbye, you guys can stay here, I'm gonna find out what we have, but online doesn't need this and all, so.
Just got really confusing real quick.
Yep, it usually does. Alright, so we're gonna get rid of that. Oh, I mean, I don't wanna do that. Let's look at the schedule that I have.